Welcome to the final part of the Code of Emotions. As you've seen in the previous video, a stressor activates mobilization in two pathways, with a short-term rapid startle impulse produced by the sympathetic adrenal medullary system and a long-term stress response produced by the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The short-term response happens less than a second. But if this quick rush or quick attempt, let's say, doesn't solve the stress or problem, the long-term stress response takes over. The HPA axis is a three-part system that consists of the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenals. The hypothalamus balances the autonomic nervous system by managing chemical signals like neurotransmitters and hormones. It signals the pituitary gland, which is located just below hypothalamus, to trigger the adrenal cortex to release chemical signals into the system like cortisol and adrenaline. The activation of the HPA axis requires a long-term recurrent stressor. So it doesn't happen very quickly because releasing cortisol into the system takes minutes rather than seconds. And it is slower to take effect. But what if none of these chemicals resolve the stress? The parasympathetic nervous system comes to rescue. A mobilization happens when there is no energy to run the system, so it signals the brain to freeze. And you experience this freeze response as changing your cognitive functions and dissociation, like a flood of tears, or you might say intense sadness. Being exposed to these long-lasting chemicals in long duration and high frequency can change not only the connections in the brain, but also gene expression. Let's recap the recent show don't tell process together. First, mobilization tried to resolve the stressor with short and long-term responses, but none of these solved the problem, and a mobilization took over. While all this was happening, another system was always in the background to numb us against pain. The periaqueductal gray, the PAG in short, is an ancient analgesic brain structure at the top of the brain stem. It communicates with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems to regulate confrontation, escape, and immobilization. So finally, this show don't tell process ends with a cameo, the dopamine system, which is responsible for reward and motivation reinforcement. Your brain reads all these electrical pulses and chemical signals to model your version of the world. The unconscious constantly processes external and internal inputs to create memory clusters for each situation. The unconscious updates your capacity whenever a change occurs, and it must complete this process before sending each cluster to the hippocampus. At this point, it is crucial to understand the difference between the automated unconscious and the cognitive conscious, what we call the neocortex. The unconscious has a self-perpetuating structure that cannot speak, but communicates through emotional notation. The speaking part, on the other hand, belongs to the conscious, which is cognitive and slow. But I think our ancestors planted the seeds of the humanity's fundamental problem right at that junction. I'll talk about it in the following video.